So, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed the lunch, and I'm very pleased to have you all come to the Young Company panel. It's my great pleasure to moderate this today. My name is Janet White, and I'm a business advisor to the startup and early stage company space. I'm doing work with Merlin Mentors, if you heard Terry talk about that at lunchtime, along with mentoring in some of the accelerator programs in town. So startup companies, early stage companies are really very near and dear to my heart. So again, I'm just so impressed with this panel of 5 Wisconsin companies that we have for you today. The format of this is going to be that each one of them will talk about themselves and their company for about 5 minutes, and then we can move into a Q&A. But before we start, I'd really like to thank our sponsor. The Kramer Brothers are the ones that sponsored this session for us. Kramer Brothers are a construction company for biotech and life science. And so they've really been very integral to our community over the years. They're a very strong supporter of biotech. They've been a very strong supporter of BioForward. We're very pleased to have their sponsorship for this event today. Okay, so with that, I'm going to introduce each one of them one at a time. First up, we have Curtis Jones, who is the Director of Research and Development for Rhythm Technologies. Curtis.
So thank you for the introduction. I'm here today to talk to you about the work we're doing at Rhythm Technologies. So Rhythm was founded in 2017, and we're developing an in vitro diagnostic assay for the diagnosis of heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, which I'll get to later. Largely up to this point, we've been grant funded, so we had a phase 1 SBIR grant from the NIH, which we recently completed. We've also had a grant from the WEDC, a matching grant, and a therapeutic accelerator grant from the Medical College of Wisconsin and the WEDC. Additionally, just this past month, we filed for the phase 2 SBIR, which we're hopeful is going to come through. So in terms of the key people at Rhythm Technologies, Anand Padmanabhan is the lead inventor of the technology and the founder of Rhythm Technologies. Dan Sem is the acting CEO, and myself. I'm the Director of Research and Development. I'm also the only employee at Rhythm Technologies. So I handle most of the scientific stuff and the administrative stuff as well. So heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, or HIT, is an adverse reaction to heparin treatment. About 12 million people a year get heparin in the United States. Of those, about 1 million people will show some signs of HIT, so that's blood clots or low platelet count. When it's suspected that the heparin is stopped, the patients transition to an alternative anticoagulant, which carry high risks of bleeding and are very expensive, and a sample is sent for diagnostic testing. There's 2 sorts of assays that are done for this disease. The first is typically done in hospital labs, but it suffers from a high false positive rate. And there's another test that can be done. This test is more complex, and it requires fresh, normal donor platelets. So because of these complexities, it's only done in about 5 labs in the United States. And these 2 assays, the turnaround time for both of them is long, which can lead to delayed diagnosis. So there's some major shortcomings in the management of HIT. About 5 people die in the United States every day with a HIT diagnosis. There's also a huge increase in other morbidities, such as blood clots, amputations, stroke, that kind of thing. And we think that having better diagnostic tools can help alleviate some of that stress. Another recently described entity is vaccine-induced immune thrombotic thrombocytopenia, which is a mouthful. You may have heard about this in the news recently. So people get these COVID-19 vaccines, and very, very rarely they develop blood clots, typically in the brain. And what we've found out through other collaborators is that the technology that we developed at the Blood Center of Wisconsin is very good at detecting these antibodies that cause this disease. So in terms of the technology, I'll give you a brief overview. So what we described at the Blood Center of Wisconsin is if you take this protein called platelet factor 4, incubate it with platelets, normal donor platelets, and then add a serum sample, you can tell whether or not the patient has this disease based on whether or not the platelets get activated. What we're doing at Rhythm Technologies is trying to put all this technology in a box so it can be easily done in a hospital lab replacing the two assays that I talked about earlier with one quick assay that would be able to give you a final answer. The two major innovations that we had at Retham were developing a protocol for stabilizing platelets that can be shipped with the assay, and developing an easy endpoint to use that can be done in a hospital laboratory. So we've published on this several times. Most recently, we had a 409 patient prospective study, which shows that this technology is good. And we're preparing another manuscript that uses those stabilized platelets and the easy to use endpoint, and it also shows that it's good. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions later.
Okay, thank you, Curtis. Next, I'd like to invite Bill Donaldson up. He is the president and CEO of Estrogenics. Bill.
Thank you. So Estrogenics is a startup drug discovery company dedicated to improving women's health through dedicated chemistries. And in particular, we're focusing on dementia and hot flashes for postmenopausal women. Menopause it has an average onset age of about 50. That means women are living approximately 40% of their lives in postmenopause. Menopause is known to have a massive decline in estrogen production. And the consequences of that estrogen production include hot flashes, weight gain, bone loss, mood disorders, a decrease in attention, decrease in concentration, and surprisingly enough, a decrease in memory and increased Alzheimer's risk. This was something that prior to actually getting involved in this, I was unaware of. My grandfather had Alzheimer's, and so I was under the impression that it was actually men who had a greater incidence of Alzheimer's than did women. But it's the case that women have about twice the risk of Alzheimer's as do men. The additional healthcare costs for untreated hot flashes are estimated to be at greater than $300 million per year. So how did Estrogenics come to be? Estrogenics is really a spin-out from research which was conducted jointly at Marquette, Concordia, and UWM. So we're a Milwaukee-based company. And there are three founders, myself. I have more than 35 years experience in academic research and also served for a time as an associate dean in the College of Arts and Sciences. I'm recently retired as of May from Marquette University to take up full-time working for Estrogenics. Karen is the VP and Chief Scientific Officer. She has greater than 30 years experience and is an expert in the area of estrogens and memory. In fact, she's the editor of a book which focuses directly on estrogens and memory. And a name which you might have heard actually just recently, Dan Sem, is our VP for Business Development. So collectively, the team has greater than 85 years of experience within this area. So the portion of menopause has actually treatments which are available. So their current treatment for that is hormone replacement therapy. That's provided by a number of companies. And hormone replacement therapy does address the symptoms of menopause. It moderates hot flashes, it lowers bad cholesterol, it increases good cholesterol levels, and it increases bone density for it. So the question you might ask yourself is, well, why are we bothering to enter this field altogether? And the reason for that is that there is a problem with hormone replacement therapy, traditional hormone replacement therapy, and that is that traditional hormone replacement therapy has an increased risk for breast cancer as well as blood clots leading to stroke. And for that reason, physicians do not prescribe hormone replacement therapy to women with any family history of cancer or stroke. So those women go through essentially about 50% of the women in terms of in menopause do no treatments at all for hot flashes. The number of women over or in menopause in the United States is estimated on about 50 million women at that point. So that's a large number of women who are actually doing nothing to address these symptoms of menopause. So why is it that there is this problem with menopause with traditional hormone replacement therapy? And that's due to the fact that there are actually two estrogen receptor alpha and beta. and that the endogenous ligand, estradiol, is equally potent for both of those. And it turns out that certain breast cancer cell lines are estrogen receptor positive. That means that they cause those cancer cells to increase in terms of proliferation. In terms of estrogen receptor beta, those are associated with the beneficial neuroprotective effects of estradiol. And so the solution for this that Estrogenics has come up with is a unique non-steroidal molecule, which we've termed EGX358, has the benefits of estrogens without the side effects for that. It's a small molecule which is selective for estrogen beta over estrogen receptor alpha by 750-fold. So this allows for a huge therapeutic window for dosing that. It's been demonstrated in a mouse model to moderate hot flashes and improve memory. Doesn't promote breast cancer cells, so we don't see any proliferation at levels which are 370 times the effective dose or effective concentration for it to activate estrogen receptor beta. It doesn't have any off-target effects that one would anticipate for that. And so we're looking at a seed stage and funding for this to carry on to other studies which will lead to an investigational new drug. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Next up, I'd like to ask Maria Athanasiou, the co-founder and CEO of Marpam Pharma, to talk. And she said I was welcome to butcher her name, so I'm sorry if I did.
And how do I go to my slides? Here we go. As Janet said, I'm Maria Athanasiou, CEO of Marpam Pharma. We are on a mission to cure HIV. My talk is not going to be quite as scientific, more about the process of forming a company. And people are usually interested in my background, followed by how the company formed, and then what we've done, what we're planning to do, and where we're headed. So I am from Fond du Lac. I got my BS in genetics from Madison. And then I got a PhD from the University of Minnesota in pathobiology, which was the study of human disease. I went on to do a postdoc where I was really like the lab director, I guess, of Human Genome Project Sequencing Center, and I'm an author on the Human Genome Project. I then worked at a biotech company for about 12 years, where I wore a whole lot of different hats during those years. It had different names, a lot of different CEOs, and in the end, I was the team lead for developing a drug for the treatment of depression. And I was really involved in every aspect of that drug development. So my co-founder is Pam Skinner. We hadn't seen each other for about 20 years, and we got together socially. And at the end of getting together socially, she said, I've been wanting to form a company, and I think I've been waiting for someone to form it with, and it's you. And my response was, no, it's not. And here I stand. She was persuasive. So Pam is a tenured professor at the University of Minnesota. She's spent more than 10 years developing this one-time treatment for HIV. So the treatment is a CAR T cell therapy that directs the patient's own T cells into B cell follicles where HIV is hidden in reservoirs, and our natural T cells are excluded from B cell follicles because they're an immune protected site. So in the first 3 months of forming our company, we formed as an LLC, which is okay to do, maybe not the greatest thing. We did due diligence on the product first, though, which was from a patent perspective. Did we have freedom to operate? Did we have reasonable patent protection? We did, based on marketing, was this a product people would want and would use? And also from a scientific perspective, do we really think, and drug development, can we really develop this? We invested a small amount of money, the two of us, and then applied for an STTR phase 1 grant. And we were awarded that grant right away, expressed interest in licensing the patents that we need, and there are 2. And then we engaged family and friends, but we engaged family and friends who were very well qualified for their jobs. We didn't just ask people to help us who weren't really experts in the field. We were asking them to help us. And we've been fortunate. We've had a lot of volunteers. So our key highlights from 2020 to now is we were awarded that phase 1 grant. We were also awarded a regenerative medicine grant. We set up our lab about a year ago and hired our first employees, which were 2 at the time. We participated in I-Corps at NIH, and I know Wisconsin has its own version of that, highly recommended for a startup company. We learned an incredible amount. It's really hard to describe how much we learned. But we interviewed over 40 HIV providers who all thought this was just a great product. And then we're just starting now to do investor pitches. So we're on the road to raising money. We were awarded our phase 2 STTR grant, which is $2 million over 2 years. And we're partnering with the University of Wisconsin Primate Center to do an IND-enabling primate study. So we've spent a lot of time and effort really planning, both from the clinical side, preclinical, clinical development, what our regulatory plans are, what our manufacturing plans are or production plans, and then of course how much money we need to do each of those things. So really a lot of planning goes into a startup company. We've built out our team. We have a medical advisor who's really a true key opinion leader, an HIV provider at Mayo, a contract chief financial officer who's here in Madison, and our very first hire is now the lab director. She is Mayo and Harvard trained. And I'd like to call out, we've had a lot of free advice along the way, which was much needed, and the Merlin mentors have been great. And I'd like to call them out in particular, Tom Oakley, Greg Johnson, Janet, and Michelle Venturini. They've really all provided excellent advice. I really rely on them. So that's our story, and I look forward to questions if you have them.
Thanks, Maria. Gotta watch that free advice. You get what you pay for, Maria. Next up, we have Pete Luxus, the co-founder of Attrility Medical. So moving on to a medical device.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks.
All right. All right. Hey, everyone. So Pete Luxus, I'm a co-founder, former founding CEO, and during the day I teach at the Wisconsin School of Business supply chain courses, so I have plenty to talk about with the students these days. So we're a UW-Madison spinoff. We commercialized a medical device that was invented by a doctor at American Family Children's Hospital. A lot of startups don't become businesses for many years. Maybe they never become businesses, but they kind of exist in this spectrum. They exist on Slack channels, they exist at coffee shops, all these conversations of ideas and creativity, maybe on a sketch on a napkin, or just in computer files. I know I have probably 5 sets of computer files of like different ideas for businesses that maybe when I meet the right group of people, this will come to fruition, or even in larger companies, I think it's important to have that entrepreneurial spirit. So it's really critical to identify these critical events, kind of these moments of like tension when customer needs were unmet, and then categorize those and file those away until they become more of a real business entity. And that's how we got started at Attrility Medical. As Maria said, there's a lot of social connections. It was a friend of mine who's the doctor at American Family Children's Hospital, and he's more specifically a pediatric electrophysiologist, so he studies abnormal heartbeats in little babies. And we had coffee one day at the School of Business after class, and he had 3 or 4 different ideas, and I said, Nick, I think you're kind of onto one with one of the ideas, and what I was really trying to get at was his unmet needs. There were 2 things. One, babies and kids have unique medical needs, and the other is a lot of medical devices are designed for big people and not peds. And so that was really the space that we tried to go into. And what those unmet needs were is EKGs take a long time to set up. Tech may take 20 or 30 minutes to set them up when a baby may be having arrhythmias and squirmy. And the other issue is that atrial signals are hard to see. On an EKG, you can see the big ventricular spikes. Those are easy to pick out. But where AFib and other arrhythmias lie, the atrial signals are hard to pick up. So today's standard is an EKG, or a 10-second snapshot, an EKG chart, but it's not continuous and it's not real time. So the current practice, if you've been in an ICU or a PICU or a NICU, are surface lead EKGs that are displayed on the bedside monitor. You'll also notice that there's these epicardial wires that are connected directly to the heart that are used for external temporary pacing. So our solution was what we call the atri-amp. We're amplifying the atrial signal, we're connecting directly to the heart, and now where AFib and the other atrial arrhythmias live, we're amplifying that signal on the existing bedside monitors. Also, we can still do continuous pacing at the same time to help diagnose the arrhythmias or if the patient is having issues. So here it is. Here's the atri-amp. We have about 700 of these in our office in the research park now. And it's taken us about 4 years on this journey. So we went from kind of the Slack meetings to the LLC in 2017 to an FDA pre-sub. We had a predicate device which helped speed up the regulatory path. Established the supply chain, which we tried to keep as local as possible. So our contract manufacturer is in Wisconsin. 510K went in early January. We had approval in less than 6 months, which was, you know, I was really blown away with during COVID how quickly that went. And we got our first sale. We're in hospitals. Our device is being used on babies right now. We have a lot of partnerships within Wisconsin. We're a Wharf Ventures company, as well as having our contract manufacturer located in the Milwaukee area. We're also partners with WEDIC, as well as the Isthmus Project as an investor at UW Health in the company. So this is our team. We have 2 full-time employees, Matt and Phil, our biomedical engineers. We recently brought in CEO Dave Kaysen, who's out in the audience raising our next round of money for us. And that was through a connection, actually, through BioForward. Dave comes out of the medical alley in the Twin Cities. Dr. Von Bergen was one of the inventors, as well as our board members. So I would just close with saying, you know, I'm really proud about what we're doing at Trility Medical, and you only get so many heartbeats. So, you know, make a difference at what you're doing. File away those entrepreneurial ideas at your company. You can do a lot of things. At night, it's about getting the right group of people together. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. Thanks a lot. Very interesting. All right, last up, but not least, we have Faraz Chowdhury. He's the co-founder and CEO of Immunoscientific. Faraz.
Janet. Thanks, Janet. My name is Faraz Chowdhury. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Immunoscientific. Immunoscientific is a contract research organization. We provide analytical research services for drug discovery. So our customers are pharmaceutical companies. We have developed a suite of proprietary technologies that we use to analyze the interactions of a drug and a drug target. And we're able to do this much faster with higher accuracy than how it's currently done. So pharmaceutical companies routinely use this technology called X-ray crystallography, which typically takes 6 to 12 months to perform. Using our technologies, we do the analysis in 2 to 3 weeks. So the company, it's a UW-Madison spin-out company, and I thought it would be interesting to kind of go through our timeline, how we got started, and where we are today. So as you can see, we started back in March 2014. I did my PhD at UW in the electrical engineering department. Mike Sussman, who's a professor in biochemistry, Mike always comes up with crazy ideas, and this is actually one of his ideas. So we were having beer with him at the library bar, just chatting, and he wanted us to help him put a laser in his lab. And this laser is actually pretty, there's a lot of safety concerns. High-powered laser, he didn't know what he was doing. They're biochemists, so they didn't know how to set up lasers in the lab, so he wanted some electrical engineers to help him out. So we asked him, why do you need a laser? And he said he wanted to produce radicals, free radicals, to label proteins because he wanted to study protein structures. And we said, you know, you don't need a laser. We can produce free radicals using a different mechanism, which probably will work much better. So we got to work right away. I still remember the first experiment we put together. It was in our basement lab in the COE building in electrical engineering. We put the protein in solution, and we used an electrical discharge to label the protein, and the whole thing blew up. And it was a huge explosion. No one was hurt, but the funny thing is we collected the protein samples after the whole thing blew up, and we put it in a mass spec, and we got data, and it worked. I mean, we were able to label the protein exactly like Mike was planning to label it with this laser system. But the problem is it's blowing up, so we need to figure something out. But we went to WRF first, and we disclosed the invention, and WRF was extremely supportive. From day one, they filed the patent for us. They supported the development of the technology through the accelerator program. And then essentially, and the whole thing was going on while we were still doing, the research in our labs. And it took us about 2.5 years to figure out a system which is, a small benchtop system that works well. We're able to label the proteins just like the way we want to. And we were getting really good data, and it was all reproducible, reliable data. While the research was going on, my partner Dan Benjamin and I started doing a lot of market research. So we took advantage of all the local Madison resources, starting from G-Beta, D2P, Merlin Mentors. I mean, Janet has been an advisor for a really long time. So we started really doing market research and understanding the needs or how this technology can help drug discovery. And then we applied for the NSF I-Core program. I believe Maria here been through the NIH program. So the idea is similar. Basically, you go out and do market research, you talk to customers. So we talked to over 200 customers in drug discovery, understanding what their needs are, how they do drug discovery, what are kind of the roadblocks in their process. And we found the right product market fit, which is essentially using our technology to analyze the mechanism of interactions of a drug and a drug target. And like I said, the advantage is we can do it in 2 to 3 weeks, while it's currently taking pharma 6 months to do. So that helped us put everything together in terms of our business plan, how we go to market. And now what we're doing is we're working with pharmaceutical companies as a contract research organization. And our mission is to improve the drug discovery process, speed up the process, and enable the discovery of new life-saving therapeutics. So in 2018 is when we officially launched the company. We started our SBIR program. We were funded by NIH to finalize the R&D and the development of the technology. And last year, right in the middle of COVID, I started fundraising. And at first I was nervous because we didn't know what the environment is going to be like. And also I was nervous about fundraising in Wisconsin because I thought we would have to go to the East Coast or West Coast to raise the money. But I was actually surprised by how much interest there was in Wisconsin and the availability of funding in Wisconsin. Our initial target was filled up very quickly. Wisconsin Investment Partners took the lead. WRF Venture supported the round. And then we had a lot of local investors who came into the round. And then actually our round ended up being oversubscribed. We also had interest from VCs in New York. So we ended up raising more than what was our initial target. Which is great. Again, if you're an entrepreneur and if you're thinking about fundraising, Wisconsin is actually a really good place to start. You don't necessarily have to go out to the coast unless you're doing a Series A or Series B and going over a certain amount of funding needs. So now we're fully funded. We are looking to grow. We were at Forward Biolabs, which was a great support for us early on, but now we're expanding our team. We have more equipment and we're taking in more customer projects. So that's the current status of the company. In terms of the team, I mentioned Mike Sussman. He's one of our co-founders and CSO. Mike started Nimblegen, which is one of UW spin-out as well, which sold to Roche. And that was a very successful exit for the Nimblegen team. And then we have Brad Chandler, who is our CFO. He's a professor at the UW Business School, and he's been very supportive from early on as well. And like I said, we are growing our team and looking to bring in more people. So we have a booth at the career fair outside. If anyone's interested in the biotech field, want to join a startup, try out the startup life, that experience, feel free to come over and chat. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Faraz. Okay, thanks, Faraz. Really great stories from all of you guys. Thank you very much for those presentations. We have about 25 minutes for Q&A, and would love to have audience participation. Does anybody want to get things rolling here? Right in the front here.
Maria, how did you and Pam decide whose name goes first?
You know, I was criticized for that by my family, like, why is your name first? Very Wisconsin. Pam picked the name. Her grandparents owned Harmar Mall in Minneapolis, and their names were Harold and Marie. And she just said, our name is going to be Marpam. Okay. You can't argue with the family history, so that was the plan. It came from her.
Yep. Next.
So I worked for quite a few years in a startup out of graduate school, and it was very challenging finding people to work in a startup. At that time, I can't imagine the challenge now with the competition for people and talent. So I don't know if it's kind of for anybody, if that is something that is a big challenge to grow in your company, finding talented people to work for you.
Great question. Hey, Faraz, do you want to start with that one?
Sure, I'll start. I started recruiting a couple of months back, and initially I thought, it's not going to be a big deal. We'll put it on LinkedIn, and people will apply, and we'll have a lot of resumes to look through. We did get a lot of applications, but I guess I didn't set the filters right. A lot of the applicants were not qualified. But yeah, it is extremely competitive. We didn't budget to work with a recruiter, which was a mistake, I think, because I had a hard time just getting people organically. I mean, I reached out to all my network. I've been sharing the resume or the job posting on LinkedIn, but I think it is very competitive. So we started working with a recruiter, a lot of talent is in the West Coast and East Coast, and it's hard to get people to move, which, again, I didn't realize that it would be such a big deal, but it is, especially people who have families and stuff, so which totally understandable. So now we're kind of focused on the Midwest, looking for people who are UW graduates or from Illinois or Iowa, local Midwest people. UW has a lot of really good biotech, biochem programs. The labs are really good, so I think we're hopeful that we'll be able to fill our positions through some of the local graduates from UW.
Let me turn the question around a little bit. I worked for a startup early in my career, and it was probably one of the most fun jobs, chaotic though, but most fun jobs I ever had. For companies of your size, what would make it attractive to somebody? What could you tell about the startup environment that would make it different than an established company, a much bigger company? Anybody want to take a stab at that?
Oh, I can, because I've done it myself. So, what people said to me throughout my career is, don't ever work at Big Pharma, you're not going to like it. Because I love to be involved in everything. I like to know the big picture. I like to get involved in, like, what are we planning for marketing? I like to coordinate between the groups. And so if you're at a small company, you really can be involved in everything from the legal side, negotiating agreements with vendors. You're so much more involved. Where the bigger the company gets, the smaller your box is. Right? You're only supposed to do this, and don't ask questions out of there because this is your job. And so it's really broad. I mean, our first hire had been in academics, you know, since she got her PhD for over 10 years, she stayed in academics. And she loves it because she said, all I wanted was a job where I learn. And we've been laughing like she has to learn too much. You know, like she learns and learns and learns. And she said she really loves that. So that would be my sales pitch, I guess, for working at a startup. On the other hand, it is less stable. I mean, the startup may succeed or it may not.
Yeah.
And in my case, I was the 50th employee at the company where I worked. And in the end, there were 500 employees, and I had a lot of stock and stock options. And when the company sold, I cashed out, and I moved back home and didn't work for a long time, which was really a nice perk. You know, so you have the possibility of success.
Yeah.
Curtis, I feel like you just want to say something here with your role of the do-everything guy.
Yeah, so I totally agree with what Maria said. The things that I'm learning, you know, accounting, legal, intellectual property protection, I would have had no idea about, you know, before I came to Retham. So that's been really fun. And the other thing I would say is just the nimbleness of the company. So if something changes, if, you know, market conditions change, just the ability to change directions quickly is really exciting.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yes?
Yeah, I have two questions for Bill. Where are you in, I think you had mouse trials that you were working, so what's next? And then funding-wise, where are you in terms of funding?
So all of the funding for estrogenics research has been through federal grants at the academic level. And so all of the intellectual property is actually owned by the universities for that. Sorry, that was the second part of the question, so I've blanked. The first part was where is it that we're going to next? At this point, what we need to do is to do these preclinical studies for investigational new drug applications. So this is things like stability, metabolism, toxicology, formulation for this. A lot of these will actually be done, a number of these will be done as outsourced because we don't have the facilities to do things like toxicology studies on dogs, for example. So those will be our next steps as a company.
And what's the time frame for those?
So with appropriate funding, we think we will be able to file an IND within the next 2 years.
And how do you measure hot flashes in a mouse model?
Sorry?
How do you measure hot flashes in a mouse model?
So humans react to overheating by sweating. Dogs react to trying to dissipate heat by panting. And rodents dissipate heat by their tail. So we, in fact, actually measure the temperature of the mice by an infrared camera over the top of them in a container so they stay somewhere near where the camera is for that. The hot flash itself is a chemically induced hot flash. So any women who are experiencing menopause and going through hot flashes know they come on unexpectedly. You don't know when they're going to happen. If you did know when they were going to happen, you'd go to an air-conditioned room right away. For a mouse, they can occur, you know, at random, or you can actually induce a hot flash by using an NK3 agonist, which is what we administer these mice. We can watch a spike in their tail temperature and then eventual drop back down to a baseline temperature for it.
So you call that a telltale sign of a hot flash?
Very good. So no questions at the moment. Okay, we've got one here. Yep.
Just a technical question. So if you've identified the ER alpha as the problem in the existing product, is there any threat that somebody will isolate the functional aspect of the existing product as a threat to your product?
Sorry, I'm not.
So if you've got alpha and beta and they're together in the existing product.
No, sorry. Those are two receptors which are in mammals. So in humans, there are both estrogen receptor alpha, there are receptors, and estrogen receptor beta for that. There have different distributions throughout the body. So estrogen receptor alpha for women are more localized in breast and uterus. Estrogen receptor beta is a little more upregulated in the brain areas for humans as well as other mammals, and so that's why we're looking to target that area.
And it's a single molecule that's firing both in the existing product?
The endogenous ligand for that is estradiol. It's a naturally produced hormone that males produce and also females produce. For females, is a much larger quantity that's produced, and throughout their lifetime, it's helping for sexual maturation for them. But at that point in menopause, there's a huge decrease in it, and so now it's not getting to the areas that it's necessary for.
Okay, I want to ask Pete a question.
There is one more question.
Okay,
right?
yeah. Yours will be better than mine.
This is a bit of a less technical question, but for anyone on the panel who wants to answer, what are some of the factors that are guiding your planning and decision making around things like communications, PR, media relations, and marketing at this stage in your startup's development?
Maybe I'll talk about that a little bit. So when we started, again, another thing we didn't budget enough for was marketing. I thought that I'll do all the marketing, I'll go to the conferences, I'll do the presentations and find our customers there, which we were very successful doing early on. But now that we're growing, we have more bandwidth. We can take on 10 customers instead of 2 customers that we were working with previously. So as we grow, as we scale, I think there's really a big need for putting together a marketing and sales strategy and having a team that can support that. So PR people, marketing people, that's all important. To give you an example, our website was initially built on Wix, and we spent the night and put it together, and we're like, we're not going to spend money on our website. Like, who cares? But turns out that all our customers, the first thing they say to us is like, oh, I went to your website to figure out what you guys do and your papers and stuff. And we're like, okay, well, we got to make sure our website looks good, because that's the first point of contact. And if they can't find a good way to contact us from the website, or they're not getting the relevant information, then we're losing customers. So I ended up adjusting our budget, and we spent a lot of money to make a new website. And these are things that I guess I learned as we're going through the process, and now I know that as we grow, we got to have put more emphasis on marketing and sales and PR, and have experts do it, and not have like everything just trying to do it on my own. So yeah, hope that answered your question.
While we were waiting for FDA approval, we had some time to think about go-to-market, and we went through different scenarios, and one of them was hiring a sales force to do that. We decided that was going to be very expensive, and with sales being kind of out in the middle of COVID, we didn't quite know. So we decided instead to go with an independent distributor strategy. So they're coming up with a lot of these marketing programs. We still attend trade shows and things like that, which frankly have been pretty sparsely attended, not like this event today, but we really rely on our distribution centers, distributors for the direct marketing.
So who are those distributors? People like Medline, or?
No, they're smaller independents. There's networks of independents for specifically medical devices. They're kind of like Medtronic folks that get their own independent distributors. So they have small sales offices. They might have anywhere from 3 to 10 reps. They'll have a warehouse. Some of them buy they're stocking distributors. So we actually sell to them at a discount, so we can recognize that revenue right away, and then they're selling it to make a profit. And then there's also commissioned, like 1099 reps as well. So yeah, I mean, that's an art in itself, kind of assembling that whole distribution network. And we've went to largely an outsourced business model aside from the design and the management.
So as opposed to an agent or a manufacturing rep channel, you've taken the stocking distributor model.
Correct. And a lot of the large Medtronics or GEs or Siemens, they already have networks in place. So if a small company were to get acquired, they would be integrated into those channels anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Maria.
Are you looking to get acquired?
Well, at some stage, you know, the space that we're in right now, we're in the ramp up. We need to be ramping up our sales and get to a point that, you know, we have engineering proof of concept. Now we need to establish that market proof of concept.
So you guys have all kind of touched on this. We got another question. Okay, sorry. Yes.
Do you see a collaboration between attendee clinics and immunoscientific?
Yeah, I was actually going to talk to you later. Thanks for bringing it up.
Yes.
Talk to us about some of your interesting experience in pitching funders, some of the words, the gods, lessons for us to learn.
Well, you know, we have this phase 1 and phase 2 grant through NIH, and you can apply to be part of their, and they select you to be part of their pitching programs. So I participated in one on Monday, which was like a 6-hour Zoom thing, and just got some feedback. So I can share with you the feedback I got. So it was with investors, but not people who intended to invest in the company's pitching. They were mentors who were just providing feedback, and then we can incorporate that, and then it's actually going to the real investors or strategic partners. So, I mean, some of the feedback was you have to be a C corporation. I mean, we're right now an LLC. I knew that, but we have to convert. You have to have the intellectual property licensed, or it's a major red flag for investors, and be sure you mention that in the pitch. It was, I don't know what field you're in, but it was recommended that we do a health economics study, and that we, for HIV, present that up front, that this product will save money in the healthcare system over the long run, but to have the data that supports that and present it up front. That if you are a founder and the CEO, you cannot work full-time in an academic position. You have to be committed to the company. There was one woman who presented who had a full-time academic appointment, and they said that is a no-go for investors. You can't do that. Those were kind of the key highlights that I remember. That was just this week. Helpful? It was helpful to me.
Was it a C Corp because of institutional investment, or why a C Corp?
Well, these were angel investors. You're a business guy, aren't you? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So you know, when you're actually issuing stock, if you have like convertible debt, or like when you issue the stock, they need some place to put it, so they want it converted. We're going through the same process now. So we did 2 kind of friends and family rounds with convertible debt, and now we're out raising a price round. So we'll have the same thing where we'll convert to a C Corp as part of the term sheet at the closing. You know, I would say, to answer your question, like, do business plan competitions. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great place to start, right? You can get out the governor's business plan. There's other ones, and they give you nice frameworks. They give you like the business model canvas. You know, just get out and pitch. Really talk about the unmet needs. You know, the problem that you're trying to solve, and just get a next meeting.
Yeah, and I think getting proven interest from customers is huge, and I think that really helped us with our fundraising. We had 2 customer contracts when we started fundraising, and we had some revenue coming in from there. So you know, it'll help your valuation for sure if you can do that.
What's the difference between an LLC and a C Corp?
Mm-hmm.
An LLC is a limited liability company with limited liability, which is really nice if you're one of the partners. And you can, it's a partnership but without stock, is that right? And a C corporation has stock. There's also a public benefits, and a C corporation has, it's a separate entity from the people who own stock in it. So it's its own thing. You know, if it's sued, not the people who work there. We've considered being a public benefits corporation, and I have asked so many people about that, and every single investor says don't do it because it's confusing to investors. They're so accustomed to C corporations. Although a public benefits corporation has everything a C corporation has, it just adds on to that you have some public benefit. So, I mean, I was told over and over again it has to be a C corporation, not S, not public benefits, not LLC. But I'm not an investor, so I don't know, is there someone else here who can answer that better than I did?
The C Corp doesn't limit the number of investors, and it also allows for institutional investment. From an investor's perspective, a C Corp is attractive because you do the things that you mentioned, Keith. Limited liability corporation has
There's some benefits to the owners with taxes with an LLC early on as well. And I would say don't let the business entity bog you down at all.
Right.
Go to the B&E clinic at UW-Madison or around the state. You can set up an LLC for what, $150 or less. So yeah, focus on the innovation, the customer needs, and the business part you can figure out later.
Whether it's an LLC, a sub-S, or a C corporation, you still have a corporate veil, which allows the limitation of liability. So if that's what you want to protect yourself.
Yeah, if you get to a priced round in a Series A, you're going to need to be a C corp. Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
I just have a quick question back to incentivizing new employees. I didn't hear any of you talk about the cap tables and what you might have set aside for stock options or how you're using that to incentivize.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll go first. We have a 15% option pool, which seems pretty standard for seed round companies. And we do want to incentivize our employees through stock options rather than just like a base cash salary, because with a startup, you're taking a big risk versus going for a big company, but you're betting on the future of the company. So those stock options, if you believe in the company, if you believe in the mission, you can be rewarded very well if everything works out for the company. So yeah, we do have a stock options. We prefer to offer employees their compensation package being, a good significant amount of it being stock options. But we had candidates who said, they value the cash more and they might need the cash more. So we're flexible depending on their needs.
Anybody else?
I would just add that, equity is one form of compensation, right? You have the salary, and I like how you put that with it. It's kind of a mix, but equity is one part of the compensation. So there's the founders' shares that come in, and then there'll be the next round investors that convert in. We do have a pool as well too for key employees that are usually used at, issued as options. So they vest over a period of time. I'd say like 2 to 4 years is pretty typical, either vesting on milestones or vesting on over time. Now, if the company gets acquired during that time, there's triggers that they automatically convert fully to the full amount. So I would say if you're like in a startup and you have a chance to work for one, see if you can get some equity, even if it means taking a little less compensation, because you're in it for the long play down the road.
Okay, we have just a couple minutes left. I'd just like to invite each one of you in turn. Any advice for would-be entrepreneurs out there?
Don't do it, no. I'm joking.
We're not starting with Maria.
It's a lot of hard work. I mean, that would be and we're from Wisconsin. I mean, or most of us probably are or live here. I've been told my whole career, wherever I lived, eventually someone would say, "Are you from the Midwest? You're so hardworking." It really I think we're used to working hard here. That's a value in Wisconsin. It is a lot of hard work. It's, be prepared to work hard, but it's also very rewarding. Yeah. Really incredibly rewarding.
I would add, just be surrounded by a good group of people. Make sure it's because you're going to be spending a lot of time with them.
Yeah, good advice.
I would say the preparation, just making sure all your T's are crossed and I's are dotted, can save you so many headaches and so many different, aspects of the business that you have to be careful about.
Thank you. And Bill?
And the one that I would reiterate that came up a number of times is participation in one of the I-Corps program. For estrogenics, we were initially focusing on memory because that was one of the key areas of expertise of Karen Frick. And what we found from the I-Corps program was that that was not the main concern of women who are undergoing menopause, that their number one concern was hot flashes. And memory was well down the line of their concerns for that. There were a number of others in there, but hot flashes was the primary one. And so that actually shifted all of what we did in terms of figuring out what we wanted to do for animal testing. And it also changed our thinking about the fact that what we were eventually go into for clinical trials was going to be something like hot flashes because we'd get the data back on that much more rapidly than we would with something like memory, which would have been a much more longitudinal study that would have to be done. So it was key to changing how we thought about everything. I can't be a better proponent of going into the I-Corps because you start off with some concepts of your own, but then what you find out by doing that is what really is more important out of that.
Yeah, thanks. And we'll finish up with Faraz.
Great. Yeah, and I agree with Bill. I-Corps was great. Always listen to the market, talk to customers as much as you can. But in general, working for a startup, I mean, it's a lot of fun. I think you're never going to get bored. There's always things to do, and it is a really fun journey. So I'd encourage you to think about it if that's something that you're interested in, and just go for it.
Okay. So that concludes this session. I just want to remind everybody that you have about 30 minutes for networking before the final session of the day, which is down in the main auditorium. And I'd just like to thank our panelists for their time and for sharing their stories.